Thank you very much indeed. Delighted to be here with you at the invitation of the CDP. Really my pleasure to work with and for the CDP. I've had the chance to actually sign the CDP report for you during 5 years, I think, but this was a long time ago in Paris. And I've been in this field for about 18 years, and I think that is the world of sustainability, if you wish. I think we are at a turning point at the moment whereby people like Larry Fink, who is actually leading BlackRock, a major investment company in the United States, has made several statements, including the last one, which is on the screen, which was sent to the CEOs globally, and actually referring to one of our Deloitte studies, meaning that to him, sustainability is the key to the future. And in fact, one of the drivers is what Deloitte's survey highlights, which is actually the pressure that is coming from the younger generations. And so I'm just willing to just create the link between what has been said just before, which is really centered around those environmental issues that we are facing, and the social dimension of all this. As a Frenchman living in the country where the yellow jacket movement was invented, I can tell you that there is a need to close the gap between the aspirations of people like us who are informed and really want to make the change, and the aspirations of people in the general population, let's say. Bear in mind that the yellow jackets first demonstrated against a carbon tax. So I think it's really important that we bear that in mind in everything we do regarding sustainability. But I don't have the clear solution for anyone. This is actually the extract from the report that was published in Davos by the World Economic Forum. It was mentioned by the first speaker that we have quite a few issues that are pertaining to climate change in the top risks identified by the CEOs. And I just want to now drill down on climate change. Climate change has several dimensions and encompasses several types of risks. The typical transition risk on one hand is like a flooding, a typhoon, a drought that actually generates an issue with production in the factories. Drought in India actually provoke migration of companies and migration of workers as we speak. So it is already materializing. It's not only a risk, but it's already an accident or an incident. Then there is the transition risk. The transition risk is multifaceted. It can be anything that actually puts your business in a new situation that you have to transition from one type of product, one type of services to another one. The typical example is when you are an energy generator and you need maybe to reduce the percentage of coal-generated electricity. So you need to abandon, in the long term, the coal generation to replace it by renewable energy. So we try to work on that at the TCFD, the Task Force on Climate-Related Financial Disclosures, which I'm very happy to be one of the 32 members of. And I'm actually the only Frenchman on this, and I'm representing Deloitte, but I'm also in my personal capacity on this TCFD. So we looked at the whole picture, and we really I think I'm very happy with the results. As you can see that, for instance, I'm giving you two examples. Principles for responsible investment. They have just decided by 2020, next year, everyone who reports based on the PRIs, as we call them, will have to report on the TCFD. So it's a big success for TCFD because it means all the financial sector is going to adopt it. Then the second one is our guests today, the CDP, as you will see, I suppose, have published on 7,000 respondents to their questionnaire. And the questionnaire has been updated this year to encompass and include and integrate the TCFD 11 disclosures. So we can say in a way that at least 7,000 companies report on TCFD globally, which is probably underestimated. There are more than 10,000, in my belief, that already report based on TCFD, out of which you have 600 plus CEOs who have stated their support for the TCFD. The CEO has said that they believe in TCFD and they want to promote it. But the other ones are using TCFD, but their CEOs have not signed up, just making the distinction. In Turkey, I think Guarantee, who is going to speak after me somewhere in the afternoon, is going to explain that they have signed up at the CEO level. This is a very busy slide. I know there are a lot of words, but it's just examples. It's a slide by the TCFD, examples of all the activity that is taking place globally on TCFD. Last week I was in Tokyo for the whole week. It was so busy with the Ministry of Industry, the Ministry of Energy, both published guidelines on how to use TCFD. They already have 60 signatories at the CEO level, and they are aiming at 100 by June, as Japan will lead the G20. So it's just incredible, the buy-in of TCFD in various countries, not all countries, but at least in Japan, Australia, US, Canada, UK, France, the European Union. These are the key countries that have really adopted the TCFD. So if I come back to what TCFD is about, I'm going to just highlight that it's a task force with about half of them, I would say, belonging to the financial sector, financial industry, and half belonging to the, let's say, the emitting companies, like power companies or cosmetic companies or what, the real world producing goods and services. Half, and we have 5 consultants in the middle, like myself. We have one from EY, one from PwC, one from KPMG, and one from ERM, and one from Mercer. And so we worked during one year and a half, and we produced our report in June 2017. And what I really like with TCFD is there are 4 dimensions that I really like. First of all, bear in mind TCFD stands for Task Force on Climate-Related Financial Disclosures. So every word counts. It's about the financial disclosures. And the disclosures need to be within the financial report. And so we know it's a big challenge to put those disclosures in the financial report, especially some of them are narratives. They are not quantitative. We are trying to propose that companies report as much as possible on monetized impact in dollars or euros, but not so easy. So that's number 1 dimension. It sits in the financial statements, or let's say the financial report. Number 2, scenario analysis is required, and I speak to that. Climate-related scenario analysis, and this is the biggest challenge of the TCFD. Thirdly, the TCFD talks about risks and opportunities. So as a risk management consultant that I was before, and I'm still am, you know that risks has a positive and a negative dimension. So we made sure that we were very clear that we want companies to report both on the left side on the risks and on the right side on the opportunities. On the negative side of the impacts on the left and the positive side of the impacts on the right. And finally, what I think is good with TCFD is that it proposes to report on targets. Targets, meaning that it's not only, we've seen that onion, I call it the onion. It's been shown before. So governance, strategy, risk management, metrics, and targets. I really love the target dimension. This is probably not going to work, but it's metrics and targets C, which is at the bottom end. So companies are requested not only to report on past indicators or past KPIs of their past performance, but really on the targets for next year and the next 5 years or next 10 years, or you choose the time horizon. You decide. TCFD is not mandatory. TCFD is in a way freestyle. There are some guidance. there are some models. There is a supplement on scenario analysis, but certainly we don't impose a standard. So most important disclosure, as I mentioned, scenario analysis. You can find it on strategy C. So if I read it, this is describe the resilience of the organization's strategy, taking into consideration different climate-related scenarios, including a 2-degree or lower scenario. And that is probably the one recommendation on which companies are scratching their heads most of the time. So we have seen, and we're going to see that in Turkey, quite a few companies actually disclose within the CDP on scenario analysis. Maybe they're not so specifically talking about climate-related scenario analysis, but we'll see that in more details. But what does it mean for a company? It means that you have to reflect internally, maybe with the help of someone from outside, maybe with some other stakeholders. You have to reflect upon the challenges of the future for the company. Again, impacts of climate change on your business, opportunities that climate change generates for your business. And you can probably have an as-is, as we call it, scenario analysis, which is if the business progresses the same way it's always been progressing, that's scenario A, business as usual. And another disruptive scenario in which you really think hard about potential climatic impacts. And again, I say that maybe it's a drought, maybe your factory is going to be closed, maybe your product has to change, maybe your staff is not even going to be able to reside where they currently reside. You have to think out of the box and you create something like a disruptive scenario. And to do that, like you project yourself in 10 years, you look at the scenarios existing on the web, which has, for instance, the IEA scenarios, the International Energy Agency scenarios, the IPCC scenarios, and at least one of them, 2-degree scenario. And those scenarios, they give you hypotheses upon like the mix of renewable energy, or they give you expected figures in terms of water availability. But frankly speaking, I've been doing the exercise for Deloitte globally. Deloitte is a consulting firm, 280,000 employees. What does it mean to us? I mean, the energy mix of the future, the water availability for Deloitte. So we really had to think out of the box and propose some scenarios that are going to be disclosed very soon, actually, on our website. So I'm just telling you, because there's a lot of ambiguity, that what the TCFD requires is not to just try and find the answers to your scenario analysis within the publicly available scenarios. You have to go one step further than that. So last, maybe a remark on this particular slide. These dimensions, governance, strategy, risk management, metrics and targets, they very much ring the bell of the integrated reporting, the IIRC. So I think there's a general movement towards saying that it's not only about about KPIs such as carbon. You see that the recommendation metrics and targets B mentions that you should disclose scope 1 and scope 2. It's not only about that. It's really about the whole thing. Does your company take a leadership role at the CEO level in the field of climate change and expectations based on climate change? I would just finish by saying that we have disclosed a report in 2008 in September that we test TCFD, in which we propose an outlook on the level of adoption of the TCFD recommendations by companies. And we came out with 5 outputs. First of all, the first one, the majority of the companies do say something about climate change, which is good news, based on our sample of 2,000 companies. But the second one is that the information on scenario analysis is usually not so good, and this is an understatement. Scenario analysis, at the moment, is not widely adopted because it is complicated. And it's not because it's complicated that companies should not do it, but it's a fact that at the moment it's still complicated. Very often the disclosures are not made in the financial report. They are made very often in the sustainability report. The fourth takeaway is that the financial implications are not always disclosed. And finally, there are variations amongst the sectors and amongst the countries. Not everywhere do we have the same level of adoption globally. I've mentioned the countries that are more advanced, and the sectors that are more advanced are the ones that the TCFD has identified and that the CDP has adopted their questionnaires on, which is the agriculture, transportation, this is energy, and there's the last one. She's trying to tell me. Manufacturing. So we have a lot to do still. We are going to have one more year to work. 2 weeks ago, Deloitte hosted the plenary session of the TCFD in London, and we were informed by the Financial Stability Board that the TCFD is extended by 1 year, which means it's not going to be ending this June. It's going to be ending in 1 year later, approximately, which means that we'll have more time to provide more guidance to companies or to do something additional to what we've done. But our recommendations will not change. Our recommendations will remain the same, but maybe we'll give more input on how to handle the situation. So that being said, I wish you good luck in all what you are doing. I know you are doing a lot of good things related to climate change disclosures. And as was said before, when you disclose, it means that you make it happen internally. Thank you very much.